We're tracking up the biggest stories at the moment. A fresh hike in the pump price of petroleum, motor spirit, PMS, or petrol looms following the adjustment of an ex-depot price of the product. This adjustment was contained in a leaked internal memo for the Petroleum Product Marketing Company, PPMC, a subsidiary of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC, cited by Channels Television on Friday. The document marked PPMC/C/MK003 and dated November 11, 2020, was signed by the managing marketing manager of the PPMC, one Mr. Tijani Ali, and addressed to the executive director of commercials of the agency. It contains an advice which seeks an upward review of the ex-depot price of PBMS, which is the price of the product sold at the tank farms, to 155 naira and 17 kobo per litre for the initial, from, of course, its initial 147 naira and 67 kobo per litre. Consequently, marketers will be dispensing the product to motorists within a band of 165 naira and 173 naira per litre. What does this mean to the people of this country? Will it increase the hardship in a year saturated, of course, with vices? Does it stand for a greater good? Data feeds are coming through in one place simultaneously on all our social media platforms, on channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channels, where you can follow us right now on m.channelstv.com and on Apple, Android, Fire, Roku TV as well. Be part of the show. Tweet at Gimba Umar CTV. Use the hashtag State of the Nation and let's get your thoughts in. It's prime time here in Lagos, and this is State of the Nation. Welcome everyone in Nigeria and the rest of the world. I am Gimba Umar and this is State of the Nation. Earlier in September, let's take you back a little bit. The federal government declared a fully deregulated downstream oil sector, paving the way, of course, for prices to be determined by market forces, especially international oil prices. The deregulation had been singled out as the reason behind the recent hike in the price of petrol. We're also seeing another round of it today, by the way. Well, according to the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipriya Silva, deregulation will be difficult for Nigeria at the initial stage, he says, but will be better in the long run. I have with me in the studio, Zak Abala is an economist and expert in the petroleum sector. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on State of the Nation, as well as Hector Ibikiowobu. He's the editor-in-chief of Sweet Crude Report publication. He joins us from the United States. Many thanks indeed to you as well for coming on State of the Nation. But let's begin here in the studios, Mr. Zak Abala. We have, myself and you, we've had this discussion in the build-up to the era where we had the deregulation of the downstream sector, of the oil sector, as a matter of fact.
Correct.
And you had a lot of misgivings about this, but are you surprised today to see that the ex-depot price of petrol has now been hiked, is now going to be selling at 155 naira and 17 kobo from 147 naira, which it was before now?
Gimba, I'm sorry to say this. In this context, I'm not surprised at all. But this is what I have to say. Technocrats must have the courage to tell government the truth. Technocrats must have the courage to tell leaders the truth. And when I talk about technocrats here, I'm referring to oil and gas economists, oil and gas lawyers, oil and gas accountants, oil and gas environmentalists, oil and gas engineers, and even oil and gas energy journalists. We must tell our leaders the truth. If a concept is wrong, that concept is wrong. At a point, we decided, or we allow our leaders to say the concept of subsidy was not working, and we threw it away. And they predicated that on corruption. Corruption is an attitude. Concept is something that is globally and universally accepted because it has been tested. It passed through what we call test environment and global environment. Have you seen scholarly or real materials on the concept of corruption, but you must have seen materials on the concept of refining, concept of engineering, concept of journalism. We ran away, we threw away a universally acceptable cushioning concept, and we went to something that is also wrong, looking at Nigeria as an emerging economy. Nigeria would, as a country, would policies that you will always see somersault. Nigeria as a country with very weak currency. We look at all this. So we said all this before now. This is all I will want to say. As long as we are not ready to confront the government or our leaders and tell them the truth, we will contribute in grinding our economy to a halt. Then history and posterity will not be kind to us.
You heard what the Minister of State for Petroleum said.
Yes.
He said that deregulation will be good for our country in the long run. Are you now saying that deregulation has failed in its entirety?
You know, I've always told you I'm ready to have not only a national debate or a continental debate, but even a global debate in the context of Nigeria. Because I don't want to start analyzing the GDP variables again. When you talk about economic restructuring mechanisms, sir, we've talked about this over and over. You have privatization, you have deregulation, you have commercialization and liberalization. In the context of Nigeria, commercialization and liberalization are probably the best you need to adopt. Deregulation will not work for Nigeria, because Nigeria is an emerging economy. Nigeria is an import-dependent country. Nigeria has a weak currency. And when it comes to policies, we have policy somersault. Then you're talking again about a product that we have here. In fact, ask those proponents and technocrats that have always been supporting government, that ask them this simple question. Even the current deregulation, is it an import-focused deregulation, or is a deregulation that is aimed at making sure we internally domesticate the downstream sector of our economy? Because it is actually the downstream sector that contributes so much to GDP. That's why you will hear us producing millions of barrels of crude oil that we sell to as a commercial commodity internationally, but contribution to GDP is near zero. It's the downstream. It's the processing of raw material. It's the production of finished goods that will create aggregate economic movement. And the only way you do that, get the product from the wellhead in Naira, move it to the respective processing facilities in Naira, refine it in Naira, sell it in Naira, generate your Naira, hold yourself from the foreign exchange differentials. And technocrats are supporting government. Government will say, we want policy X. Then technocrats will start helping government to achieve it. Tomorrow, policy B. Why can't we be courageous to tell our government that these policies won't work?
Okay. Hector, I'm sorry I've had to keep you a little longer than expected because the conversation is getting heated. And I believe you can also hear us from where you are in the United States. But what's your take on this increase in the point, at the point of dispensing petrol into cars? Because that's already happening. On my way to work just this evening, I've had to buy petrol for 168 naira per litre, which was much, much less, at about 154, if I'm not 59. But how does this come to you today?
Well, I'd say, first off, let me correct a few misnomers. The NNPC today put word out there that the ex-depot price has been increased to 153.17, not 155.17. And the ex-coastal price has been increased to 128 naira, not 130. Now, be that as it may, you know, it is still an increase. An increase is an increase. The gentleman in the studio there with you, or the gentleman who just spoke well. I'd say there are some fine points he's made. You know, the fine points being, you can't expect to domesticate or predicate, as it were, your costs in dollars, and not expect to be exposed to the vagaries, the vulnerabilities we suffer, matching the naira against the dollar. For as long as costing of petroleum products that's imported is based on the naira dollar parity, we will remain on the receiving end. The price can only continue to go north. So while I believe in deregulation of petroleum products as a principle, I would like to submit that we have some inconsistencies. If you want the prices to stabilize, as it were, for domestic refining, you must sell to the local refiners in naira. At the moment, the regulation is based on total dependence on importation. So for as long as we are import dependent, the prices can only continue to go north.
But if I may just jump in, Hector, what the government said before we got to this point was that when we deregulate, we will have a more stable. When we deregulate, we will have something more stable. Zaka Bala is saying that deregulation is not an option because we are an emerging economy. Can you address? You have been in that sector for the better part of 3 decades. Can you address that concern? Will we have better prices, for instance, if we have the PIGB or PIB, if you will, any of the terms they choose to use? Will we have prices crash?
Prices will not crash. Zaka Bala is right. For as long as pricing is totally import dependent, and you import in dollars, mind you, and the naira continues to tank against the dollar, the pricing can only continue to increase. It's not rocket science. For as long as petroleum products you import, it's import dependent, and you import in dollars in any case, then you pass the cost off to the hapless consumer. The prices can only continue to go up at the pump. So reality check, we must take a second look at the way we've deregulated. There's some fine-tuning that still needs to be done. And I don't think this much has been captured in the PIB that is being rushed through the National Assembly. It needs to be properly captured. If you have to deregulate, you need to take into consideration the fact that we're totally import dependent. For as long as you remain import dependent, the prices can only continue to go up.
Okay, let me bring the conversation back to the studio here. Concerning the PIB, Mr. Zaka, will it be correct to say that the federal government's proposal of the addition of the costs of managing the national strategic stocks of petroleum products, will it be right to say that that vis-a-vis the retail prices of crude oil will bring about a slight depreciation or reduction in the cost of petrol? Because the government has a reserve on one side, different from what Ipman has.
I'm sorry, you see, I'm almost smiling. I don't feel really comfortable when I see all kinds of confusion, semantics, and that was why I was blaming technocrats.
Are you saying that the government's strategic reserve for petroleum products is useless?
How do you what do you mean by strategic reserve? When you talk about strategic reserve, the content of that reserve you're referring to, was it refined and produced internally, or it was imported? It's a very simple question. And that was why I even asked, even the deregulation that we have been coaxed and accept because we were almost getting asphyxiated, is it focused at import of refined products, or the deregulation will actually encourage foreign investors to come in and local investors to invest? You will find out that it's no. As long as you have a weak currency, As long as, without notice, your currency will get devaluated or depreciated,
Okay,
you will suffer from this.
We will have to go on a short break. This is where we are now.
Zero.
Subsidies to petroleum products have been removed, we are told. We're going to dig further into that and focus some more on the PIGB, or PIB if you will. Stay with us. Welcome back to State of the Nation. The issues are really thorny with the increase in the ex-depot price of petroleum products from 147 naira to 155 naira. We understand Hector is telling us that it's 153 naira to a litre from the tank farms. Hector, how does the passage of the PIGB by lawmakers, you did talk about them just before we went on break, how does the passage by the lawmakers affect the regulatory agencies, the PPRA, for instance, the DPR, Petroleum Equalization Fund, the PEF? How does it affect all of this in a nutshell?
Well, we would expect the bodies that evolve out of what's existing now to be strengthened. But we don't have clarity. You know, for the length of time we've had the PIB evolve, we've had all manner of documents making the rounds. So at the moment, there is no clarity, if you ask me. There is just no clarity. We expect that at the end of the day, we will have a stronger DPRO, a stronger PPPRA, but there will be no need for a PPPRA, come to think of it. Because if all you do is have a body that comes to tell us the prices have been increased, I don't see what role they'll be playing that can be played by one unit at the DPRO, which will have become, or which will have evolved into a commission. You know, we need clarity. We don't have clarity. That's the long and short of what I have to say about that.
Okay, Zaka, whose responsibility will it be then when PPRA, we understand, is being scrapped because of the new formulas that are being applied in the oil sector? PPRA, PEF will also go at some point, we understand. But something new is coming, and it is called the NMDPRA. Are those just terms?
I can't stop myself from laughing because you're just talking about administrative changes, not structural changes. It's too late even. Even if you pass the Petroleum Industry Bill into law now, it's too late. We're talking about a document.
It's too late.
It's it's irrelevant now.
So
and allow me to explain.
Wait, hold on. If you say it's going to be irrelevant, because that's the most important document that can regulate the oil industry in Nigeria today, the PIB or PIGB, if you will.
In the thinking of some people.
If we're to remove the PIGB, market forces will easily set in, and they will set the products, the prices of the product. And that's what you don't want.
Yimba, have you forgotten that the original PIB was one document, a 223-page document that got everybody thinking? Pundits all over the world, scholars, some people even produced PhD thesis on this. Before we knew, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the whole thing was balkanized and broken into four with all kinds of political confusion and adulteration. And now you're talking about PIGB, one document, a single document that you will have produced to regulate and monitor and get people's interest. Believe me, international investors and local investors have lost interest in the PIB. Scholars have lost interest. All the works we've done...
We cannot absolutely say that because they have not come out to say that.
But I'm telling you, when you go, all the write-ups, the suggestions are now in different shelves. That's what I'm telling you. And you are talking about something that is stale. And at the end of the day, what you are going to have will be administrative changes. You will only change titles. Then you start changing names on on documents. You know, you start changing. The human beings have not changed. You've not changed the structure. And let me tell you, even if you implement this, you will never have a Saudi Aramco. In Saudi Aramco, if you go, there are so many Nigerians. If you go to Petronas, there will be so many Nigerians working. If you go to Petrobras, you see expatriates. Will that make people to come from different parts of the world for us to cross-fertilize knowledge? You are just making me remember how the Nigerian university system was also muzzled, such that you don't see international scholars and lecturers coming for us to cross-fertilize knowledge. Look, you're talking about a global industry and a global commodity. And that was why I said technocrats must be courageous enough to face and tell their governments the truth. If not, history will not be on our side. Posterity will not forgive us. We better tell our government the truth.
Let's talk to Hector. Hector, I'm sure you've been following the trends. At some point, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, did talk about the comparative analysis of prices sold in Nigeria for petroleum products, for petrol, as a matter of fact, and some other countries, one of which includes Saudi Arabia. And Nigeria is paying far much less than in other OPEC countries. Do you agree with the argument of the President that we need to scale up as well what we are paying in Nigeria for petrol?
Absolutely not. I don't agree. I think the President's argument was disingenuous. He had to make an attempt to draw a parallel, but it was completely disingenuous. You must look at the currencies, you must look at the standard of living, you must look at the GDP. There are quite a number of factors to take into consideration. You must look at even the wages. What's the minimum wage in those countries? What's the minimum wage in Nigeria? Those are things you factor into pricing. So it was simply disingenuous.
Tell us, how do we wriggle ourselves if we cannot get ourselves out of this straightforward? How do we wriggle ourselves out of this situation?
Well, there's no straightforward path. I would say we must apply a combination of factors. I recall that back in the day before the PPPRA was birthed, we had the PPPRC led by Chief Rashid Gbadamosi of blessed memory. We had technocrats like Engineer Funsho Kupolokun. They will corral us into a meeting room and bring us up to speed on what the plans were. They were going to fix the roads, they were going to fix the rail lines, they were going to fix the refineries. Those were the expectations. But these things never materialized. These things never happened. And today, from out of the blues, because the government is under pressure, the government says, oh, they've deregulated. You've deregulated, the refineries are all comatose. They're not working. So you can't deregulate when petroleum products pricing is predicated on imports. You can't do that. The present minister, Chief Timipri Silva, and his group, they've come up with gas, CNG, and LPG for motor vehicles. That's good. It's a good idea, but it's something which will take time. It's something which will take a while. I want to believe that we need to get the government to really speed up getting vehicles imported into the country to not just if you have an automobile import policy that doesn't take into cognizance the fuel components it will deploy, then that's a problem. You need to rein that in. You need to come up with a policy that determines the kind of vehicles that come into the country. For a country that wants to diversify its energy consumption, you must come up with a policy to address imports. You must come up with a policy that addresses generator imports as well. because most of the generators that are imported into the country are dependent on PMS. So you need to consciously begin to de-emphasize the dependence on PMS.
That's a good place
if you go to Europe,
to take it away from you. That's a good place to take it away from you. But let me get the final thoughts from Zaka Bala. You talked about nairalizing the whole process.
Downstream sector of the oil and
Nairalize
gas.
it. I hope the authorities are listening now.
I pray so.
Nairalize it, and then the prices will come down.
Correct.
That's one. Other than that, what else can we do?
Well, first of all, on the nairalization, even if it is just one naira we will be gaining by refining internally. Just imagine the 50 million liters that we consume. Multiply that by that 1 naira gain, and multiply that by 7 days in a week, and multiply it by 30 days in a month.
Does it really work that way?
No, but what we are saying, some people.
I know it's not.
No, but
I know
let me
it's
tell
not
you.
rocket science,
Because you want me to summarize. You want me to summarize. Some people said even if we start refining internally and whatever, what we will be gaining may not be more than 5 naira. And I'm saying even if it is 1 naira, multiply that by the quantity of consumption, the 50 million liters. That's 1 naira multiplied by 50 million. Multiply that then by 7 days in a week and 365 days of the year. But this is because you mentioned Mr. President. President is the father of the nation. But I want to say 2 things about Mr. President. Mr. President had 2 confidants, though they are late now. One, Professor Tam David West, who incidentally was my mentor. And then Professor Chi Ikoku of Petroleum Engineering, who was my MSc Petroleum Engineering lecturer and supervisor. All I would just ask, probably, I don't know if the president can hear this. If these 2 gentlemen that were among the best people he trusted were to be alive today, and he says this, will
they're
they,
not
will
alive,
they,
but the president will have to take a stance to see that
No, but they are his
what
friends.
Nigerians want
Exactly.
is to pay less for this product. But I must thank you so much indeed, Zaka Bala, an economist, for talking to us on State of the Nation. He's a petroleum sector expert, as well as Mr. Hector Ibikiowobo. Is the editor-in-chief of Sweet Crude Report Publications, talking to us from Texas in the United States. Many thanks indeed to you as well for talking to us, and to everyone who's been part of the show. I am Gimba Umar, and this is State of the Nation.